The delivery driver climbs 5 flights with heavy packages, not knowing customer would pay off his mortgage. Each labored step echoes through the stairwell, a rhythm that has become as familiar to Marco Reyes as his own heartbeat. 5 flights, 37 steps per floor, 185 steps total. Each day, sometimes twice. The weight of cardboard boxes pressing against his chest, the burn in his thighs, the sweat trickling down his spine despite the December chill. The elevator in this aging brick apartment building has been out of service for months. The landlord keeps promising repairs, but promises don't make packages lighter or stairs fewer. Marco shifts the stack of boxes higher against his chest, his breath forming small clouds in the unheated stairwell. His uniform, once a bright blue, has faded to the color of a tired sky, much like his dreams. The company patch with his name stitched in red thread is starting to fray at the edges, just like his patience with life. Apartment 5C, that's his destination. Always 5 degrees Celsius. 3 times a week, sometimes more. Always heavy packages. Always the same polite but distant smile from the man who answers the door. Almost there, Marco whispers to himself, a habit formed over 12 years of delivery work. Talking to himself helps distract from the physical strain, from the constant worry about the mortgage payment that's already 15 days late. The third late payment this year. The foreclosure notice had arrived yesterday. Stark black letters on white paper that might as well have been a death sentence for everything he'd worked for. 60 days to come up with $14,320 in back payments, or the bank would take the small 3-bedroom ranch where his mother's ghost still lingered in every corner, where his daughter Lucia had taken her first steps, where life had once felt full of promise. Marco reaches the 5th floor landing, pausing to catch his breath. His knees protest, a sharp reminder of 42 years of living and the last 10 spent carrying other people's possessions up and down stairs. The pain is almost welcome. Physical discomfort is easier to handle than the hollow dread that has taken residence in his chest since Sandra left 2 years ago, taking half his income and leaving all of the mortgage. The package on top shifts precariously. Marco steadies it with his chin, wincing as the cardboard edge scrapes against his stubble. 1 more hallway, 8 more doors, then back down the stairs to retrieve the remaining 3 boxes from his truck. Then on to the next delivery, and the next, and the next, until his 10-hour shift ends and he returns to an empty house with too many rooms and too many memories. Apartment 5C's door is distinguished from its neighbors only by a small potted fern hanging beside it. No welcome mat, no seasonal wreath, just the brass numbers 5C and that silent, watchful fern. Marco has never seen it wilt or grow. It simply exists, suspended in time like so much of his own life. He balances the boxes against the wall with practiced expertise and knocks. 3 quick raps with his knuckles, the delivery driver's universal signature. The door opens moments later. The resident of 5C stands in the doorway. Mid-40s, dark-rimmed glasses, neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard, always in immaculate button-down shirts, always with a book or tablet in hand, never in a hurry, never appearing particularly excited about his deliveries. Yet he orders something almost every day. Mr. Reyes. The man smiles, the same polite curve of lips that never quite reaches his eyes. More deliveries already? Marco nods, slightly surprised at the use of his name. Most customers never bother to read the patch on his chest. 4 boxes today, Mr. Harrington. These 3 and 1 more downstairs. Daniel Harrington steps aside, holding the door open wider. Please, bring them in. And it's Daniel, remember? We've known each other, 6 months now? Known is a generous term, Marco thinks. Seen each other through a doorway repeatedly might be more accurate. Still, he appreciates the gesture toward familiarity. I'll just set these inside and get the last one. The apartment beyond the door always intrigues Marco. Bookshelves line every wall, filled not with decorative objects but actual books. Thousands of them. The furniture is minimal but expensive looking. No television that Marco has ever seen. Just books, a laptop, and more books. Careful with your back. Daniel comments as Marco bends to set down the boxes. That's quite a load. I'm used to it. Marco replies, straightening with a slight wince he hopes is invisible. His lower back has been spasming since yesterday's route, but he can't afford a day off. Every hour of work counts when the bank is counting down the days until they can take you home. Used to it doesn't mean it's not heavy. Something in Daniel's tone makes Marco look up. The customer is studying him with an intensity that feels almost uncomfortable. Just doing my job, sir. 1 more box to go. Daniel nods, but instead of stepping back inside his apartment, he follows Marco to the stairwell. I'll come down with you. Could use the exercise. The descent is silent and awkward. Marco feels the weight of unspoken words hovering between them, but he can't imagine what this educated, well-off man could possibly want to say to someone who carries boxes for a living. Outside, the December afternoon has grown darker. The sky hangs low and gray, threatening snow. Marco's truck sits at the curb, its faded logo barely visible in the dimming light. He retrieves the final box, the heaviest of all, and locks the vehicle. "Let me help with that one," Daniel offers, reaching for the package. "It's heavy," Marco warns, surprised by the offer. In 12 years, he can count on one hand the number of customers who have offered to help carry their own packages. "I'm stronger than I look," Daniel says with a small smile, and this time a hint of warmth reaches his eyes. Together they climb the 5 flights again, the box between them making conversation unnecessary. At the apartment door, Daniel takes the package fully into his arms while Marco catches his breath, trying to disguise his relief at sharing the burden. "Would you like some water?" Daniel asks, setting the box down inside his doorway. "Or coffee?" "I just made a fresh pot." Marco hesitates. Company policy discourages socializing with customers, but his throat is dry, his muscles aching, and the thought of returning immediately to his cold truck seems suddenly unbearable. "Water would be great, thank you." Daniel's kitchen is small but pristine. White cabinets, gray countertops, high-end appliances that look barely used. A single mug sits beside the coffee maker, a reminder that Daniel lives alone. No family photos adorn the refrigerator, no children's artwork, no shopping lists or reminder notes. "Here you go." Daniel hands him a glass of water, ice cubes clinking against the sides. Must be exhausting, all those stairs every day. Marco drinks deeply before answering. "You get used to it. That's what people always say about difficult things." Daniel observes, pouring himself coffee. "You get used to it. But should we? Get used to things that are unnecessarily hard?" The question hangs in the air, philosophical in a way that makes Marco uncomfortable. His world deals in concrete realities. Boxes to deliver, bills to pay, a home to save. Philosophy is a luxury for people who have handled the basics of survival. "Sometimes there's no choice," Marco finally says, setting down the empty glass. "Thank you for the water. I should get back to my route." Daniel nods, but as Marco turns to leave, he asks, "Do you enjoy being a delivery driver, Mr. Reyes?" The question catches Marco off guard. No one has asked him that in years. Not his ex-wife, not his daughter, not even himself. "It's honest work," he answers, falling back on his standard response. Then, surprising himself, he adds, "But no, not anymore." Something in Daniel's expression shifts. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "What would you do if you could choose anything?" Marco's laugh comes out harsher than intended. "At my age, with my education, there aren't many options." "Humor me," Daniel insists, leaning against his counter. "If circumstances were different, Marco should leave. The truck is running, using gas he can barely afford. Other deliveries wait. But something in Daniel's genuine interest holds him in place. "I used to work with wood," he admits. "Made furniture. Nothing fancy, but solid pieces. Good work." He flexes his hands, calloused from carrying boxes rather than crafting with them. "Had a small workshop in my garage." "What happened?" "Life." Marco shrugs. "Bills. Mortgage. My wife got sick. We needed better insurance. Delivery companies pay benefits. Furniture making. Didn't work out." Daniel nods, seeming to absorb this information like one of his many books. "Thank you for sharing that. And for climbing those stairs every time." "Just doing my job," Marco says again, moving toward the door. "See you next delivery." "I'm sure you will," Daniel replies with a smile that seems to hold a secret. On the drive to his next stop, Marco puzzles over the interaction. In 6 months of deliveries, he and Daniel Harrington had exchanged perhaps 50 words total. Today, more than that passed between them in minutes. The conversation left Marco feeling exposed, as though he had revealed far more than a forgotten dream of woodworking. The remaining deliveries blur together. More packages, more stares, more polite nods and blank faces. By the time Marco returns his truck to the depot at 7:30 p.m., his lower back is screaming and his mind is a fog of exhaustion. The drive home in his personal vehicle, a 15-year-old Honda with 212,000 miles, and a check engine light that's been on so long he's forgotten what the dashboard looks like without it, takes 35 minutes. Each minute is a battle against the urge to close his eyes. His house sits dark and silent at the end of a cul-de-sac. No porch light welcomes him. He stopped leaving it on when Sandra left. What was the point of lighting an entrance to emptiness? Inside, he moves through his evening routine mechanically. Microwave dinner, Bills spread across the kitchen table, numbers rearranged like puzzle pieces that will never fit together. Shower. 18 minutes of a streaming show he won't remember in the morning. Bed. But sleep eludes him. The foreclosure notice sits on his nightstand, a white rectangle glowing accusingly in the darkness. He had called the bank today during his lunch break, trying to negotiate, to plead. The representative's voice had been professionally sympathetic, but ultimately unyielding. Rules are rules. Payments are payments. Dreams are dreams. Marco's phone buzzes. A text from Lucia. Dad, can you help with tuition this semester? Financial aid fell through. Need $2,200 by Monday. He stares at the ceiling, tears burning behind his eyes. His daughter, the first in their family to attend college, working toward a nursing degree. His pride, his hope. The reason he climbs those stairs every day without complaint, but there is no $2,200. There isn't even $220. After the mortgage payment, the one he can't make, and utilities and groceries and gas, his bank account holds exactly $178.43 until next payday. I'll figure something out, he texts back. Don't worry. The lie tastes bitter in his mouth. But what father tells his child there is no hope? Marco finally falls asleep, imagining himself climbing an endless staircase, packages stacked higher than his head, while somewhere above him, a door remains perpetually out of reach. Morning arrives with aching joints and a dusting of snow across his windshield. Marco scrapes it away with an old credit card, his breath forming clouds in the pre-dawn darkness. Another day, another route, the same mountains to climb. His first delivery is unsurprisingly to apartment 5C. 2 boxes today, moderately heavy. As he climbs the familiar stairs, Marco finds himself wondering what Daniel Harrington does for a living that allows him to be home at random hours on weekdays. Some kind of professional who works from home, clearly. The apartment speaks of money. Not flashy wealth, but the quiet comfort of never having to count pennies at the grocery store. When Daniel opens the door, he's wearing reading glasses and holding a steaming mug of coffee. Perfect timing, Mr. Reyes. I was just about to take a break. Marco nods, setting the boxes just inside the door as usual. Will there be more deliveries today? Not today, Daniel says. Then with a slight hesitation that seems uncharacteristic, he adds, Actually, I was hoping to ask your advice on something. Do you have a minute? Every minute away from his route is a minute added to the end of his day, but curiosity wins. A minute, yes. Daniel leads him past the familiar living room into a small room Marco has never seen before. It's set up as a home office, but what catches Marco's eye is a wooden desk in the center, handcrafted with dovetail joints and a warm cherry finish. This was my father's, Daniel explains, running his hand along the smooth surface. It's starting to wobble a bit. I remembered what you said yesterday about working with wood. I wondered if you might know how to fix it. Marco approaches the desk almost reverently. It's quality craftsmanship, the kind he used to aspire to create. He kneels to examine the legs, immediately spotting the problem. The joint here has come loose, he explains, pointing. It needs to be reglued and clamped. Simple fix with the right tools. Daniel nods thoughtfully. Would you be willing to repair it? I'd pay you, of course. Marco hesitates. I don't have my tools anymore. Sold them years ago. I could buy what's needed, Daniel offers quickly. Just tell me what to get. The opportunity to work with wood again, even for a small repair, sends an unexpected thrill through Marco. But reality intrudes. I don't have time. My route. On a weekend, perhaps, Daniel persists. I'd make it worth your while. Marco should say no. Extra work is the last thing his body needs. But Lucia's text message flashes in his mind. $2,200 by Monday. How much? He asks, the question feeling crass even as it leaves his mouth. If Daniel is offended, he doesn't show it. $500. Marco blinks in surprise. For a simple repair? That's too much. Not for me, Daniel says simply. And it's important this is done right. Family heirloom and all. $500 won't save his house, but it would help Lucia. Marco nods slowly. This Saturday, then. Perfect. Daniel smiles, seeming genuinely pleased. I'll get whatever supplies you need. As Marco returns to his truck, he feels something he hasn't experienced in months. A small spark of anticipation. His hands almost tingle at the thought of holding woodworking tools again, of creating rather than merely carrying. The rest of the week passes in its usual blur of deliveries, but with one difference. Each time Marco delivers to apartment 5C, Daniel engages him in conversation. Brief exchanges about the weather evolve into discussions about books Daniel is reading, about Lucia's nursing studies, about the neighborhood's history. By Friday, Marco realizes with some surprise that he knows quite a bit about Daniel Harrington. He's a professor of economics at the local university, currently on sabbatical to write a book. He grew up in Boston but moved south after his father died 3 years ago. He has no siblings, never married, lives alone except for the constant company of books. What Marco doesn't understand is why this educated, successful man seems interested in the life of a delivery driver. Yet each interaction leaves Marco feeling a little more seen, a little more human than the invisible service worker he's become accustomed to being. Saturday arrives with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Marco arrives at Daniel's apartment building at the agreed time, 10 a.m., carrying nothing but his knowledge in his worn hands. Daniel buzzes him up immediately. "I got everything on your list," Daniel announces as he opens the door. The living room floor is covered with shopping bags from a high-end hardware store, and maybe a few extra things. I wasn't sure what else you might need. Marco sorts through the supplies with growing amazement. Premium wood glue, professional-grade clamps, a complete set of chisels that cost more than his weekly paycheck, sandpaper in 5 different grits, Danish oil finish, even a new work apron. "This is a lot," Marco says, fingering the fine leather of the apron. Daniel shrugs. "I believe in having the right tools for the job." They clear space in the office, laying down drop cloths to protect the hardwood floors. Marco walks Daniel through the repair process, explaining each step as he carefully disassembles the loose joint, cleans out the old glue, and prepares the surfaces. What was supposed to be a simple repair becomes something more as Marco loses himself in the work. His hands remember what his mind has tried to forget: the feel of wood grain, the precise pressure needed for a perfect fit, the satisfaction of bringing damaged things back to wholeness. Daniel watches attentively, asking intelligent questions that reveal genuine interest. When Marco's stomach growls around noon, Daniel orders lunch from an upscale sandwich shop nearby. They eat sitting on the floor beside the partially repaired desk, talking about craftsmanship and quality and the things that last. "My father commissioned this desk when I graduated from college," Daniel explains, brushing crumbs from his shirt. "He said a man should have one piece of furniture that would outlive him. Something solid to anchor all the ephemeral things in life." Marco nods, understanding completely. "My father was a brick mason. Always said much the same thing. Build one thing that lasts, and you've left your mark on the world." "Did you build something that lasts?" Daniel asks. Marco thinks of his house soon to be taken from him, of the furniture pieces he created years ago, sold to strangers and now probably discarded or forgotten, of his marriage dissolved despite promises of forever. What has he built that will remain after he's gone? "My daughter," he finally answers. "I helped build her character, her determination. That will outlast me." Daniel's expression softens. "Tell me more about her." And so Marco does, while applying glue and setting clamps with careful precision. He tells Daniel about Lucia's childhood dreams of becoming a doctor, about her stubbornness and compassion, about her struggle to pay for school while working part-time at a nursing home. The words flow easily in this space where his hands are busy with familiar work, where he feels competent again. The repair takes longer than expected. The afternoon stretches into evening as Marco decides to refinish the entire desktop, not just the repaired section. Daniel orders dinner, Thai food from a restaurant Marco has seen but never entered, and they eat at Daniel's kitchen counter, discussing everything from immigration policy, on which they disagree respectfully, to baseball, where they discover a shared allegiance to the underdog Twins. By the time Marco applies the final coat of finish, it's nearly 9 o'clock. The desk gleams in the office light, the repair invisible, the wood grain enhanced by the oil finish. "It's beautiful," Daniel says, admiring the transformation. "Better than new." Pride swells in Marco's chest, a feeling so long absent he barely recognizes it. The wood is exceptional. It just needed some care. Daniel walks to his kitchen and returns with an envelope. "As promised," he says, handing it to Marco, "and worth every penny." Marco opens the envelope, expecting to find $500 bills. Instead, he counts 10. "This is too much," he protests. "Not for the quality of work," Daniel insists. "You didn't just repair it, you restored it. That's worth more." Marco wants to argue further, but the thought of Lucia's tuition silences his objections. "Thank you," he says instead, tucking the envelope carefully into his pocket. As he gathers the tools and leftover supplies, Daniel says casually, "You know, I have a friend with an antique rocking chair that needs similar attention. If you're interested." Marco pauses. "I don't have a workshop anymore." No space to work. You could use this room, Daniel offers. I hardly do. And all the tools are here now. Why would you do that? Marco asks, the question that's been hovering at the edges of his mind all day finally emerging. Why help a delivery driver you barely know? Daniel is quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. When I was writing my first book, I hit a period where I couldn't afford both rent and food. I was too proud to ask for help. A stranger, the owner of a small bookshop, noticed me reading the same books day after day without buying any. Instead of kicking me out, he offered me a job. That small kindness changed everything for me. He meets Marco's gaze directly. Sometimes we're put in positions to pass on what we've received. Marco nods slowly, understanding. I'll think about the rocking chair. But even as he says it, he knows he'll say yes. The feeling of creating again, of being valued for skill rather than just service, is too powerful to reject. As winter deepens, a strange rhythm develops. Marco continues his delivery route, including regular stops at apartment 5C, where the packages never seem to diminish. But now every Saturday and some weekday evenings, he finds himself in Daniel's spare room, restoring furniture pieces that somehow always find their way there. Word spreads through Daniel's academic and social circles about the skilled craftsman doing restoration work. Marco creates business cards at Daniel's insistence. Commissions begin to come directly to him rather than through Daniel. The extra income helps with Lucia's tuition and chips away at the mortgage debt, though not quickly enough to outpace the foreclosure timeline. One evening in late January, after finishing a particularly challenging repair on an antique credenza, Marco finds Daniel sitting at his desk, the first piece Marco restored, writing in a leather-bound journal. I should go, Marco says, wiping his hands on a rag. It's getting late. Daniel closes his journal. Before you do, I've been meaning to ask, how are things with your house situation? Any progress? Marco's stomach tightens. He's mentioned the foreclosure only in passing, too proud to elaborate on his financial struggles despite their growing friendship. Not really. I have until February 28th to come up with the back payments. The furniture work helps, but how much do you still need? Daniel asks, his tone casual but his eyes intent. Marco sighs. About 11,000. Might as well be $1 million. Daniel nods thoughtfully. Have you considered taking out a personal loan or refinancing? Credit's not good enough, Marco admits. And no bank wants to refinance when you're already in foreclosure. What about selling some of your larger furniture pieces? The ones you've mentioned making in the past? Marco shakes his head. Sold most of them years ago. The few I kept, they're for Lucia someday. Daniel seems to accept this, changing the subject to a new restoration project that's coming in next week. But as Marco drives home, he can't help feeling that Daniel was fishing for information rather than simply expressing concern. February arrives with bitter cold and mounting anxiety. Despite the additional income from furniture restoration, Marco remains thousands short of the amount needed to save his home. He considers asking Lucia to move back and share expenses, but can't bring himself to disrupt her education and independence. He looks into smaller apartments but finds that rent has skyrocketed since he last checked the market 15 years ago. Each night, he sits at his kitchen table with calculator and pencil, running numbers that refuse to add up to salvation. Each morning, he rises before dawn to deliver other people's possessions while preparing to lose his own. The third Saturday in February, Marco arrives at Daniel's apartment to find not another piece of furniture waiting for restoration, but Daniel sitting at the kitchen counter with a stack of papers before him. No project today? Marco asks, confused by the break in routine. A different kind of project. Daniel replies, gesturing to the chair beside him. Sit down, please. Marco complies, noticing that Daniel seems uncharacteristically nervous, his usual academic composure slightly fractured. I've been thinking about your situation. Daniel begins straightening the papers. About your house? I appreciate the concern. Marco says stiffly, embarrassment heating his face. But I'll figure something out. I'm sure you will. Daniel agrees. You're resourceful and hardworking, but sometimes even the most capable people need a hand. He slides a document across the counter. I'd like to help. Marco glances at the paper. A bank check made out to him for $14,320. Exactly the amount needed to stop the foreclosure. His vision blurs momentarily. I can't accept this, he says, pushing the check back without touching it, as if it might burn his fingers. It's not a gift, Daniel says quickly. It's an investment. Marco frowns. I don't understand. I've been watching you work these past 2 months. Daniel explains. You have exceptional skill, Skill that's being wasted delivering packages. I want to invest in a business partnership. He pulls another document from the stack. I've drawn up a proposal. I provide the capital to save your house and set up a proper workshop. You provide the craftsmanship and run the business. We split the profits 50-50 until my investment is repaid, then renegotiate. Marco stares at the proposal, emotions warring within him. Pride pushes him to refuse immediately. Practicality whispers that this might be his only chance. Suspicion wonders what Daniel really wants from him. "Why would you do this?" he asks finally. "What's in it for you?" Daniel's expression softens. "Financially, potentially a good return on investment. I believe your work could command premium prices with the right marketing." He pauses. "But honestly, the satisfaction of helping someone rebuild their life. And perhaps, friendship." The last word hangs between them, vulnerable in its simplicity. Marco realizes with sudden clarity that Daniel, for all his books and education and comfortable life, is profoundly lonely. Their Saturday restoration sessions have come to mean something to both of them. For Marco, a return to meaningful work. For Daniel, connection to someone outside his academic bubble. "I need time to think about this," Marco says finally. "Of course," Daniel agrees, "but not too much time. Your deadline is approaching." Marco takes the proposal home, reading it repeatedly throughout the weekend. The terms are fair, more than fair. Daniel's investment is protected by a lien against the house until repaid, but the interest rate is minimal. The business structure gives Marco autonomy in daily operations while benefiting from Daniel's financial expertise. Still, accepting feels like admitting defeat somehow, acknowledging that he couldn't solve his problems alone, that after decades of independence, he needs help. Monday morning brings another delivery to apartment 5C. Daniel opens the door as usual, accepting the package with a nod but not mentioning the proposal. The silence feels loaded with unspoken questions. As Marco turns to leave, words suddenly burst from him. "Why me? You could invest in anyone. Someone younger. Someone with a business degree. Why a 42-year-old delivery driver with a failing mortgage?" Daniel considers the question seriously. Because when you work with wood, you see something no one else sees. You understand that value isn't always visible on the surface. You recognize potential where others see only damage. He shrugs slightly. "I admire that perspective. It's rare." The simple honesty of the answer dissolves something hard and defensive in Marco's chest. That night, he signs the partnership agreement and writes a letter to his mortgage company, informing them that the full amount of back payments will be delivered before the month's end. The transition isn't immediate or simple. Marco continues his delivery route while Daniel helps him convert his garage into a proper workshop, installing proper lighting, ventilation, and storage systems. They source equipment, some new, some refurbished, creating a space that makes Marco's heart swell every time he enters it. By April, Marco reduces his delivery schedule to part-time. By June, he gives notice altogether. Daniel's academic connections provide a steady stream of restoration projects, while Marco begins creating original pieces on commission, small at first, then increasingly substantial. They name the business Second Grain Furniture, a reference to the hidden beauty that can emerge when damaged wood is properly restored. Daniel handles the financial side and marketing. Marco creates. Their partnership evolves with surprising ease, each man's strengths complementing the other's weaknesses. 1 year after that first desk repair, Marco stands in a small gallery space downtown, surrounded by his creations. Tables, chairs, cabinets, each piece bearing his distinctive style that honors the wood's natural character while serving human needs. The exhibition opening is Daniel's idea, a celebration of their successful first year in business. Lucia moves through the crowd proudly, now in her final year of nursing school, explaining her father's techniques to interested patrons. Several pieces already bear sold. Tags, including a writing desk commissioned by the university president after seeing Daniel's restored heirloom. As the evening winds down, Daniel approaches Marco with 2 glasses of champagne. "Congratulations," he says, handing one to Marco. Every piece is magnificent. Marco accepts the glass, still slightly uncomfortable with celebration, but learning to accept praise. "Couldn't have done it without you?" "That's not true," Daniel counters. "You had this in you all along. You just needed the right circumstances to bring it out." He raises his glass, to finding value in what others overlook. Marco clinks his glass against Daniel's, reflecting on the strange journey that brought them here. From delivery driver to artisan, from customer to friend, from despair to possibility. "Huh?" "You know," Daniel says conversationally, I never needed all those packages I ordered. Marco blinks in surprise. What? Daniel's eyes twinkle with mischief. I ordered things I didn't need. Books I already owned. Supplies for hobbies I don't have. Anything to ensure regular deliveries. But why? Marco asked, bewildered. Because I saw you, Marco. That first day, climbing those stairs with such dignity despite your exhaustion. I wanted to know your story. Daniel shrugged slightly. I've always believed that true character reveals itself in how people handle difficult circumstances. You impressed me. Marco shakes his head, torn between amazement and amusement. You ordered packages just to meet me? To observe you, Daniel corrects. The friendship was an unexpected bonus. The business partnership even more so. They stand in comfortable silence, watching as the last gallery visitors admire Marco's craftsmanship. The journey from that stairwell to this moment seems both impossible and inevitable. Thank you, Marco says finally, the words inadequate for the gratitude he feels. Not just for the financial help, but for seeing something in me I'd forgotten was there. Daniel smiles, the warmth reaching his eyes completely now. That's the thing about good wood and good people. The quality is inherent. It just needs the right conditions to show itself. As they lock up the gallery that night, Marco realizes that Daniel was right about his father's wisdom. Build one thing that lasts, and you've left your mark on the world. Marco has built fine furniture, yes. But more importantly, he and Daniel have built something else that will outlast both of them. A friendship founded on recognition of worth, on seeing value beneath weathered surfaces. The delivery driver who once climbed 5 flights with heavy packages never imagined that those stairs would lead not just to a customer who would pay off his mortgage, but to a complete reimagining of what his life could be. Sometimes, Marco reflects, the heaviest things we carry aren't packages at all, but the weight of believing our circumstances define our worth. And sometimes the greatest act of kindness is simply seeing someone fully, their struggles, their potential, their inherent value, and helping them see it too.